yours over there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We're looking at Peter's house, or what we should call Peter's mother-in-law's house. Okay? And by looking inside, you will see 3 octagons. A smaller one in the middle, a second one closer to us, and we're standing on the edge of the 3rd octagon. This is not Peter's house. These are the remains of the earliest churches built on this site. What is Peter's mother-in-law's house is the stones in between the walls and the floors, the basalt stone here and inside there and inside the center one. Okay? Now, how do we identify things as being something ancient? Well, there are 3 ways. You can verify a place scripturally, historically, archaeologically. So how about if we start with archaeology? Archaeologically speaking, there is so much evidence inside. If we look inside the smallest of the octagons at a different angle, or if you go up into the church, you'll be able to see the walls still have some columns with plaster on them. The floor has been laid and relaid 11 different times. On the walls, we find carved Peter and Jesus' names in a variety of different ways. And we find carved the earliest signs of the church, the anchor and the fish, not the cross. The cross isn't going to come in for almost 400 years yet. Okay? So that gives us tremendous evidence. But more than that, we have Scripture. And what does Scripture say? Scripture says Jesus went from the synagogue to the house. Now this tells me a lot from what it doesn't say. And it doesn't say he walked a Sabbath day walk, he walked for half an hour, he walked for 4 kilometers. He went from the synagogue to the house. Here's the synagogue, here's the house. Okay? And finally, historically, and this is probably the most convincing, it's like Rich said before, of how accurate Queen Helena was. She always found a place. But when she came here, she couldn't pick a site because there was already a 300-year unbroken chain of visitation and veneration of this site. So it had never been abandoned. It had never been left alone. She couldn't come and say X marks the spot because it was already done for her and maintained by the people for 300 years. Which to me says a lot to the veracity.
Would the proximity of this house with the synagogue say something about the social level of who Peter married?
Possibly also, this house I'm told has somewhere between 10 and 20 rooms. And the houses were called insulae. They were 1-story houses, 10 feet high. On the outside of the house was a staircase. Why? Because the roofs of the house were thatched straw. And after a rainstorm or after a strong wind, the owner of the house could climb the stairs on the outside, part the thatching, and fix it. However, if Jesus is doing a healing, put it that way, and a man comes who can't possibly get through the throngs, his friends can carry him up the stairs, separate the thatching, and lower him down to Jesus. Therefore, biblical scripture and biblical fantasy come together. Okay, and there too, the houses are 10 to 20 rooms, most probably for guests or taxpayers.
Well, I think one of the things that you read in the accounts with Peter's mother-in-law is always very interesting. But when Peter's mother-in-law is sick, the sickness appears to be demonic, because it's more than just, it says the sickness left her, but there's an indication that what was going on with Peter's mother-in-law was more spiritual than physical. And so when you see that Jesus heals her and then she's serving them, there was such intense spiritual warfare going on around this area. And so Peter's mother-in-law, especially if that was her house, would have been an obvious candidate to be under intense demonic oppression, which seems to be the case when you read the accounts of her healing of the sickness, that it seems to be demonic in nature. And so I would encourage you to reread those accounts, especially in Luke, because it really seems to be that way, as though he's delivering a demon out of her rather than healing her of a sickness.
Folks, I would like to give you a couple of minutes, just a couple of minutes to walk around and then come right back to take your pictures and then come right back to the bus, because I still would like to get up to the Mount of Beatitudes, a fitting place for, and that's not the end of the day.
You could go into the church if you want.
Yeah. Look down inside. But then, yeah.
Susan, I was just curious. You mentioned the 3 octagons.